Welcome to Anticus Bookstore. We're thrilled to have author Karen Odden with us here tonight to talk about her newest release, Under a Veiled Moon. So, welcome, Karen. So let's start with the question, tell us about your writing process. What is that like?
So I would say one of the key elements is actually surprise. I think that writers, in fact, a lot of the writers I know and I talk to about this, we all, especially those of us who are working in sort of the historical field, we all love that moment of surprise when you find the nugget. You know, this curious thing that doesn't fit in with what you think you know. So that's why I think that surprise, I think it's sort of an underrated emotion. I think it's really important sometimes for creativity.
So this is your third book? Fifth. Okay, I've read 3, so I got to work on the other 2, I guess. How many years since you started writing?
In around 2008, maybe. So, and that didn't get published until 2016. And then I've been kind of able to get one out every year to 2 years since then.
Yeah. Were you an avid reader before that? Yeah.
Yeah. So. I was the nerdy kid who would always choose to sit in the library. My grandmother. So I grew up in Rochester, New York, and every Sunday we would go out to my grandparents' house, and they lived in Bergen. And I would usually bring my own book to read. But then one day, I guess I'd finished my book or I didn't bring one or something, and I was kind of looking through my grandmother's books, and I found this shelf of very colorful books. And I pulled one down, and there was a picture of a man and a woman on the cover, and the man didn't have a shirt on, but like, the girl had a pretty dress on, and so I opened it up, I start reading. Okay, my grandmother had this shelf of bodice rippers. Anyway, and so she walks back. I guess she was walking from the bridge room back to the kitchen, and she comes back and she kind of sees me in there with the, she kind of hustles and, oh, no, you don't want to be reading that. Anyway, so I think it was like 12. And so she kind of, takes us and said, no, why don't you go and read some of these books? And there was a shelf that had Daphne du Maurier, Mary Stuart, Victoria Holt. I mean, all of the romantic suspense, gothic-y, really great stuff. And so I started reading those, sort of like every Sunday I would go out and I would read one, and if I didn't finish it, then she would let me take it home and I'd bring it back the next week. So that was, I was the avid reader, and everybody else was doing their own thing.
This close to writing a very different category. So one of the things I love most about your writing is the characters and the personalities you display. In Under a Veiled Moon, did you have a character that kept surprising you that even as you were writing it, and how does that work? That's a really great question. I mean, of course, Corvin is my favorite. I'm sort of a little bit in love with him. But this time, the character who surprised me and who kind of came out of the woodwork was Elsie, Colin's twin sister. She appears in Down a Dark River, but she's kind of a minor character. She's sort of in the background. And then this time, she was just singing to me. So, so she, I think, is able to sort of provide some insight into Colin when Corvin needs it. But she's also, she's 19 herself and trying to figure out, where do I fit in this world? I don't want to be part of the violence that's here in Whitechapel. I do not want to just get married because everybody else is doing it. And I think she's kind of wrestling with her own identity at the same time as Colin's wrestling with his. Do I belong in the gang or I don't? So I think they've got sort of in some ways parallel trajectories, with Elsie making some better choices. So what we were talking about earlier was so the way you started reading and the way that inspired. Has your reading process shifted as you've started your professional career as an author? Is it more fun or is it less fun? How is that for you?
I think it's more fun because there's a second layer to it. Because even as I get sort of sucked into a plot or a story, I can also kind of pull out of it just a little bit and admire how an author's writing a character, or admire how a particular economy of phrase. Sometimes I just scribble down notes. Not that I'm going to actually use them in my book, but I just like the feel of it, and I will say, "Oh, I like that. I like that tone. I like how she managed to get what I think of as a concept this big into like this many words." So
So I keep an eye on that, so I'm always looking for sort of small lessons along the way.
As you're nearing the end of the book, what's it like finishing a book for you? You know where it's going, like what's your process there?
Well, I think I'm like those people who write toward my ending. I know basically where my ending is going. And usually by about halfway through, I'm fairly clear on, I've got a cast of say 3 or 4 potential villains. And sometimes it changes. I mean, sometimes I'll find, you know what, this guy, he's actually not so bad. He can sort of be my red herring a little bit. And this guy who's tucked over here, he's actually the one who's doing it. He's behind the whole thing. So I feel like I am writing toward an ending, but that ending is pretty clear, you know, early on. So I think, I mean, the trouble for me, as I think it is for a lot of authors, is what they call the muddle in the middle. And making sure that you are still building both the character arc and the plot arc all the way through that central part, you know, raising the stakes, and you know, keeping it complex, keeping it interesting, having the turns. It was interesting though, because, and I don't want to do any spoilers, but at the end, near the end of Under a Veiled Moon, one of the characters dies. And I did not want to kill this character off. I really, really didn't. And in fact, for the first 3 drafts, I did not. And then my daughter, Julia, who is my first beta reader always, she read it and she says, "Mom, you know what you have to do." And I'm like, I know, I don't want to, but I have to. But she was right. And, you know, and I had a couple other people read it as well, and they said, you really need to. This character is made, you know, a lot of bad mistakes and needs to go.
Karen, thank you so much for being part of the Anticus family and for coming out tonight for our book club and making this such a special event. We really appreciate the 5 years you've invested in helping us develop our bookstore. And everybody in the Anticus family, thank you for watching our video. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can pick up your copy of Under a Veiled Moon next time you visit. It's a fantastic book, great read. And join us for one of our next author signings.